Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. In today's episode, we're continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between the Russian Federation, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and its Ukrainian proxy forces. Now, as I had reported just a few days back, that the Kursk pocket was collapsing. The Russians have now decided to make a concerted effort to destroy Ukrainian forces located in the Kursk pocket. Now, this could have been done at any point during the occupation of the Kursk Oblast. The Russian operational tempo that the Russians have recently executed could have been executed at any point in this area of the battle, of the war. Again, the reason the Russians did not execute this offensive operation prior was because it was allowing Ukrainian forces to exist and to be destroyed day in and day out in this pocket. That is what has happened. Now, the Russians are reporting that they have encircled Ukrainian forces. Now, I would not define it as a traditional encirclement. The Ukrainians do have the ability to withdraw, and we are seeing Ukrainian forces attempting to withdraw. The problem for the Ukrainians, while this is not a traditional encirclement, a double envelopment by Russian forces, the envelopment is coming from the air. As Ukrainian forces try to withdraw, they are being engaged and destroyed by Russian air assets. That includes Air Force and drones, fixed-wing aircraft, helicopter gunships, long-range artillery, and the omnipresent fiber-optic controlled drone and Lancet drone. Those are that is the envelopment piece of the battlescape right now for Ukrainian forces as they attempt to withdraw through some of these routes that they are able to try to evict themselves from the Russian Federation. Now, the other question at the moment is, will Vladimir Putin accept the 30-day ceasefire? Look, it is not in the interest of the Russian Federation to accept said ceasefire. When you have your opponent against the ropes and you are beating the crap out of your opponent, do you then back off and give him a 30-minute respite? No, absolutely not. And I'm referring to, say, a boxing match. Do you give your opponent a 5-minute timeout to get his faculties together after you've knocked him down? No, you do not do that. And then you tie in the war goals, the existing war goals of the Russian Federation. The war goals and war aims of the Russian Federation do not match the 30-day ceasefire. This is a war. There were years prior to the initiation of conflict, at least large-scale conventional conflict, in which the Ukrainians could have accepted the Minsk agreements. Both the Ukrainians and obviously its NATO handlers. They decided not to go that route. So, there is an alternative to that political apparatus, and that is war. And then we have to ask ourselves, well, what is the Russian war goal? And we think at this point, the war goal will be the seizure of Kharkov. In all probability, the Russians would like to seize Sumy. We believe ultimately, at the very least, the Russians would like all territory east of the Dnepr River. That would give the Russians a fairly large terrain feature in front of it and Western European nation states that, obviously through the expansion of NATO, seek, through the Russian perception, again, the Russian perception is the destruction and tearing apart of the Russian Federation. There's also claims to Odessa, and you have to go back in history and you have to look at the relationship that exists between Russia, Russia, and Odessa. And unfortunately, the uninformed urbanite in the West, the United States, does not have the ability or the hindsight, per se, to kind of go back in history and have a close look at that. But the Russians, understanding its history, understanding what happened during World War II, what happened in prior conflicts, and understanding that at some point, maybe not a year from now, maybe not 5 years from now, but possibly 30 years from now, 20 years from now, 40 years from now, Russia is going to be in a position where it will have to defend itself again. And that is what is driving the course of this conflict. So it'll be tough to say what Putin exactly is going to do, what the Kremlin is going to do in terms of this 30-day ceasefire. Again, probably not in the best interest of the Russians to allow this ceasefire to take place. It will give NATO the ability to reinforce. It will give the Ukrainians the ability to take a knee, rest, recoup, fortify, and then continue the war at some point. And the Russians understand that. But we'll have to see what happens. But as we speak right now, the Russians are destroying Ukrainian forces in Kursk. Let's go back real quick and just look at what has happened over the last few days. Again, this deep state map is a bit off in terms of what the Russians have actually taken. It's actually more than what is being portrayed here. But again, as I said before, Russians could have done this at any point. But they chose to exhaust Ukrainian combat brigades in this pocket. An incredibly stupid move by Zelensky to allow Ukrainian brigades to set in this pocket, controlling sunflower and potato fields in one small town, as they were just hammered for what is essentially a year. The losses that the Ukrainians took in this pocket far exceed in terms of the impact on its forces than what any sort of casualty or PR challenge the Russians took from the Ukrainians taking this small area. So we'll see what happens. That does it for today. As always, thank you for joining us. More to come very soon. Good day.